Greetings, my scattered brothers and sisters in the Lord. Trust you're having a good day and that you know that the Lord is with you and has everything that you need for this day, no matter where you might be scattered. We continue on in John chapter 5, and Jesus has healed the man who was lame for 38 years. You'll recall he did this on the Sabbath, and so when the man is carrying his mat around on the Sabbath, he's questioned by the leadership as to why he's doing this, why he is breaking Sabbath. He eventually tells them that Jesus is the one who healed him and that Jesus is the one who told him to carry his mat on the Sabbath. The Jewish leadership isn't very happy about this, and Jesus responds to them that his Father is at work even on this day, and so he too is at work. This really infuriates the leadership because they recognize that Jesus is calling God his personal Father, and in a certain sense is even making himself equal with God. That if God his Father is at work, he too can be at work. Jesus takes advantage of this misunderstanding and these accusations to actually begin to teach further about who he is. He teaches that he does nothing on his own, that everything he does is in accord with the Father, and that the Father shows him all things. And he especially goes on to emphasize that the Father has given him the authority to speak life, to give life to people. In fact, he goes so far as to say that whoever listens to him and whoever believes in the one who sent him, they receive life. And this life is kind of twofold. It's a life that's present here and now, but it's also a resurrection life. And so Jesus teaches that he gives life in this life, and that he will also give life on the other side of life at the resurrection. Maybe one way to think about it. In essence, we are born dead, spiritually dead, if you want to think about it that way. That yes, we're alive, yes, we're breathing, yes, we run about, we play, we work, we do all kinds of things, but actually, in a very real way, we are dead because we don't have a reconciled relationship with God. And so we're kind of the walking dead. And Jesus speaks to us in our death condition. And when we hear him and when we believe in the one who sent him, believe in God and believe that Jesus is the Son of God, what we discover is that Jesus makes us alive, that he brings us into this life-giving relationship with the Father, and we come to life like we've never lived before. Then we live this life in Christ, but death is going to come. But Jesus goes on to teach that the day will come when all of the dead will hear his voice, and he will call forth all the dead, those who believed in him and those who rejected him. He will call forth everyone from the dead. And those who believed in him and lived accordingly, they will be resurrected to life. But those who rejected him, they will be resurrected to condemnation, to judgment. And so important to listen to Jesus. When I try to put this in terms of my own life, I was 8 years old, thereabouts, and I guess I could say I was a dead 8-year-old. And I was at a church service and standing next to my mom, and there was a preacher who was preaching, and something was stirring inside me, and looking back on it, I think I was starting to hear the voice of Jesus. And my mom asked me if I wanted to go up and pray and invite Jesus into my heart, and eventually I said yes, and I went up and prayed, and the preacher laid his hand on top of my head and prayed for me. And I went from being a dead 8-year-old to an alive 8-year-old. And I have been alive ever since, but my liveliness has really depended on how well I have listened to Jesus. And that when I listen to him well, I'm alive well. And if I go through times, when I've gone through times where maybe I haven't listened so well or listened so closely, it's kind of like a dying time. And so Jesus speaks this life-giving word, And that life-giving word draws us into the fellowship, the relationship that he has with the Father through the Spirit. And as we abide in that relationship, as we listen to Jesus and keep in step with him, we discover that we really have passed from death into life, that we're no longer the walking dead, but that we are really alive. Now, death is coming for me. I hope not soon, but it's coming. And when it does come, I'll be dead, but I'll kind of be listening again. Because when Jesus speaks, when he calls, all of the dead will rise. And at that point, I will begin to experience resurrection life. And I will be resurrected to life so long as I listen to Jesus, as opposed to resurrected to judgment. So, alive now with the promise of life then. Kind of brought forth from the dead now with the promise of being brought forth from the dead then unto resurrection life. And the key is listening to Jesus and believing in him and abiding in him and the relationship with the Father through the Spirit. So wherever you are scattered today, recognize that Jesus is indeed the one who gives life in the future and now. And the key to receiving that life is listening to him and believing in him and living surrendered to him. So have a great day and listen to Jesus.